Let's talk about 5 hidden features on your tractor. We are a bad boy dealer. This is true among so many different tractor brands. All of them have these features that I'm about to talk about. There's a lot of stuff on a tractor, so it can definitely get confusing. And I think this is gonna enlighten a lot of you guys to really understand all the capabilities that your tractor has. So let's start by talking about this little knob that I see confused for something to do with your seat when people are shopping tractors. You don't really know what that does. Well, this knob is actually a valve for your 3-point hitch. Let's take a look at this larger tractor to get a better understanding of what this knob does. So right now we have a brush cutter that is actually attached to the rear of this tractor. What this knob does, it's a valve for your 3-point. It controls the flow of your hydrostat on the rear end of that tractor. And to understand what this valve does a little better, let's make sure we've got a good understanding of your 3-point hitch. So let's take a look inside the tractor. Let's look at this lever that lifts your 3-point. There is hydraulics that are helping you lift this up. What is actually getting the implement to move down when you push your lever forward? It's simply gravity. And so this knob right here controls the flow or lack of flow of the hydraulic fluid that is in the rear of the tractor. So by turning this left or turning this right, it's going to change how slow or how fast your implement will drop to the ground. Why would you need that to be a variable amount? Well, it depends on what implement that you have. So let's go back outside and look at this one. We've got a 5-foot brush cutter on here. This is a little bit heavier probably than if you had a York rake on the back or a back blade. Obviously implements vary in weight. Let's take a look at if we have this valve completely wide open, what happens when I try to put this implement down. So notice how fast that dropped down to the ground. I had the valve actually wide open. And if this was an even heavier implement, it would have crashed down even further. You don't want that kind of jarring effect on your implements. And you also want to be able to feather it so you get levelness if it's a brush cutter, other things like that. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to close the valve and try to push the lever forward again. So now I've got this up, and I'm gonna press this lever forward to try to drop this implement. Now it's not moving at all, okay? So it's about finding that middle point where I want this to drop gently and slowly. So even right now, even without the tractor running, I'm gonna go ahead and open this valve up just slightly, because all it is gravity that's pushing this down. So I'm gonna open it up just a little bit. And I stopped it, and I'm gonna open it up a little bit again. And so that's really subtle. So you even see right now it's slowly dropping. It's not gonna jarringly drop to the ground. It's gonna give me a lot more finesse rather than seeing this just crash down to the ground. So obviously where you have that valve is going to depend on what implement you've got. If I had this valve just barely opened up and I had a very light attachment, it would take forever for this to go down. So it's going to depend on what you're primarily running. It's going to protect implements from crashing down to the ground. It's going to give you a little bit more finesse, you know, to stop in a particular spot. So definitely something that's going to vary from person to person depending on exactly what your applications are. And so for point number 2, let's go to the front of a tractor and let's talk about the float function on your loader. So I think most of us with tractors really understand the premise of what you can do with your loader. You can curl the bucket in or out, you can move it up and down, and maybe you've been moving your loader around not realizing sometimes it seems to get stuck in this forward position. Well, there is another function called a float on your tractor, and if I press this knob all the way forward, you'll notice that this can actually lock out to this position right here, and this is the float function on your tractor. It's a good thing we just talked about what happens on the rear end of the tractor, because there are hydraulics that will lift it up, and when you go ahead and let this down, there's actually no pressure to keep it down. The 3-point on your tractor is essentially floating. Well, that's exactly what this feature does. So let's go ahead and turn the tractor on so I can give you a little better understanding of what this float function does. So I picked the loader all the way up. I went ahead and I put it into the float. And what you'll notice is the whole machine dropped. What the float is doing is eliminating any downward pressure. And basically your bucket would be resting on the surface that you're on. And why would that be beneficial, or why might that matter? So imagine if you're trying to back drag some dirt and you put the bucket in the downward position, it's going to continue to have downward pressure into the ground. And what might happen as the ground varies in height is it may give particularly harder pressure down into the ground. It could actually lead to some scalping. It's actually not going to contour with the land like you're looking to do when you're trying to spread out soil. Also, imagine if you're pushing something. So if you have a snow pusher on here, you want this to sit on the surface, and you don't want to have additional downward pressure on a hard surface in case there's something jagged popping up. You want it to be able to kind of float along with those things. There could be applications where you're trying to scoop dirt and you want to get down to the base of where you're scooping, and it might make sense for the bucket to kind of float along the ground rather than dig into the ground and get into mulch or dirt and then be able to pick it up. So there's a number of applications where using that float feature is going to be really nice. You still will have the ability to curl different directions. It's just going to eliminate that up and down pressure that I was just talking about. So I really see that float feature as, yes, protecting the land from scalping and not digging into concrete, but ultimately you are protecting your tractor by using that float feature more, because you're going to have a lot less strain on your loader component to maintain that angle. So definitely a feature you should be taking advantage of. Okay, now for this next feature, this is going to depend on what tractor you have. Your tractor, often at this level and above, has an offset wheel option. So we've actually done a video where I've talked about the first 3 things you got to do if you're buying a 50 series tractor. And one thing we mentioned in this is that you can actually offset your wheel. So on this one, there is a bowl shape here. This right now has a bowl shaped faced in. And so originally this tractor had the bowl facing out. So, and what it actually did, let's go to the rear of this tractor. It makes it significantly wider in stance. So you can see how much of this is protruding outside the fender. We can probably get a good shot here just straight behind the tractor, and it widens the tractor. This is a safety piece right here. The wider you can get your tractor, the less tippy that it's gonna be. Are you gonna have this on inclines? Are you gonna be lifting a lot of heavy stuff up front? The further you get your weight, the better. And so a nice thing to pair this with is a product like rim guards. We actually do that here at Howie Equipment, where we put liquid ballast in your tires, and that adds a significant amount of weight to the rear end. Now let's say that you don't have this ability to do this with your rims. We can look at one of these other tractors right here, even down to a smaller tractor. Typically you're not lifting really heavy stuff, so probably not quite as common, but even with some of these other tires right here, you can get wheel spacers. You can kind of see on the screen what that might look like, and the same effect is going to happen. These manufacturers try to make these with certain tolerances. There's probably issues, right, with putting strain in your axles if you get too wide. So you want to go with good, reputable products if you are looking into that wheel space option, but you may not have to invest anything. You might already have it on your tractor, and all you got to do is utilize it. Number 4 on the list, let's talk about this lever. It could be in different spots depending on what tractor you got. So on this one, we've got to go over to the other side of the tractor, so go ahead and follow me. This is a rear differential lock. What really does that mean? Well, it locks the rear end of your tractor. So if you're looking to buy a tractor, you definitely want to get a 4-wheel drive tractor. The misconception is that you always are spinning 4 wheels at a time if you get a 4-wheel drive tractor. Not the case. If you think of a car going down the road, or a tractor works off this exact same premise, when you're actually turning, your wheels need to spin at different rates. If your rear wheels were constantly spinning at the exact same speed, you would be skipping and jumping around. It would be very uncomfortable, especially think of this in a car application. If you're going 50, 60, 70 miles down the road, you'd be jumping all around. So that's particularly important when you think of something that is operating off-road, or especially in the areas that tractors are operating. So imagine driving this tractor and you've got it stuck because there is a ditch or something where it's not able to make good contact, or it's really muddy on one side or the other. It's gonna be telling the wheel of the tractor to spin the side that's actually slipping. The way that they design rear differentials is to give more power, or let the wheel spin that actually has the least amount of resistance. So by using the rear differential, pressing down on that with your heel, you are actually going to be telling it to spin this other wheel, the wheel that actually has resistance on it, which will get you out of an area that you need to go. So just because you got four-wheel drive doesn't mean all tires are spinning. That rear diff lock is actually going to make that happen for you. So if you're still with me, you've heard that term float very often throughout this video. We're talking number 5 about the draft float control on the rear end of your tractor. So I mentioned earlier the float on the front of your tractor. I mentioned that the 3-point is essentially always in a float mode. We've got hydraulics that will actually lift it up, but gravity will always take it down. So right now, if I were to try to lift on this by hand, gravity and the weight of this piece is the only thing holding it down, unlike the bucket when it's not in the float position. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift on this, and I can lift it as high as I want because it's simply floating here. Notice when I lifted this, the left side moved up the exact same amount. They are connected in here. The left side and the right side float together. Well, why do you need this floating feature on the rear side of your tractor? If you think about the total length of your tractor, the terrain that you're gonna be on up here on the front of your tractor could be very different from the back. And so if you're pulling something like a brush hog, you need that ability for it to float, for this to be able to move up or down depending on the terrain that's behind your tractor. Well, what about the sideways terrain? Even though the tractor's not as wide as it is long, there could be a benefit to somewhat of a floating feature left to right. And the smaller tractor does not actually have the feature that I'm talking about. Let's go over here. This is going to depend on brand to brand, size to size. I'm talking about this little linkage right here. So this piece, you'll notice, actually has a little bit of a slot. When I lift this, it kind of applies pressure. It's kind of locked into position. So right now, I'm actually not utilizing this feature. When I lift up on this, notice they both lift together. Well, this has a pin system, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this. Here, there. So I'm gonna pull this pin and just rotate it. Now notice what happens when I lift this portion up. Notice I have a little bit of variability where this can float until it starts to lift the other side. Maybe picture a flail mower that goes out beside the tractor and you're doing ditch banks, that sort of thing, and you want it to really rest against the ground or that bank rather than scalping. This is just a subtle thing you can do, but gives you a little bit more variability. That's exactly what this little feature does right here. I'm gonna go ahead and set that back in. But like I mentioned at the start of this video, there's a lot of different things going on with a tractor. This is just 5 of them that I think are really common that I don't see people understanding nearly as much. So did you learn anything? Let us know down in the comments if that helped you, if you picked up something new. Maybe there's some things I didn't mention. For you tractor enthusiasts that are watching this video, help us out down in the comments and let us know what you think some of the most misunderstood or hidden tractor secrets that might benefit this community watching right now. And if you enjoy videos about tractors, mowers, anything outdoors, like and subscribe, follow us, and catch the next video here from How Equipment.